Hello, my name is Brant Hunt, and my channel is Discerning What is True. I'm going to be reading from this particular book I've been reading for the last week or so, even more, The Egyptian Miracle. It's chapter 9 I'm going to be reading today. This is the particular book here by Rene Schwaller, who was an investigator, a Egyptologist back in the late, not late, but approximately 80 to 90 years ago. Did some exploring of a particular temples there in Egypt, and him and his wife did this exploration for over 15 years. They stayed there, doing remarkable research in what was there to give this evidence to us today. So they should be commended for what they've done. So thank you for being here. My channel is Discerning What is True. And let's get into this particular chapter, chapter 9, which is called Harmony and Volume. Again, it's called Harmony and Volume. And generation, be it metallical or human, be it creation or procreation by seed, representing a reduction in volume of energy that is neither volume and space. Volume alone is space. It is a quantitative. It is a non-material substance contracted into matter as a albuminated substance at a lower echelon. It coagulates by heat or by seed. This is why everything revolves around. You notice that Jesus spoke about the mustard seed. He spoke about the seed. It's very important, but it's not only physical, but it's also esoteric. You see, and seed itself can be knowledge itself also. This poses a non-polarized energy as origin and an abstraction that may be called indivisible unity, the one and only. The same energetic state rediscovers its analogies of all levels where volumes came into being. But these volumes are not already corporate and will ultimately consent of anonymous. This genesis includes time as magnitude and expresses itself directly in 3 dimensions. It thus represents a time-volume unit starting from non-polarized energy. The first perceptible product of Genesis includes a first octave, which in numbers represents from the indivisible 1, the passages to 2, first divisible unity. It is the 7 and 9 steps of Geno harmony, expressing the laws of Genesis. As far as Genesis is concerned, the magnitude of time and space are identical within volume. This Genesis is the transition of virtualities or the possibilities to a state of actuality. It is the function of qualification, the specification of metaphysics moment into physical moment. Speaking theologically and philosophically, it is the word becoming tone, as one can speak of the breath that becomes speech. Every specification represents a disposition for or against another specification, that is an affinity, and is therefore a first expression of consciousness. A first specification represents the manifestation of a state virtually contained within the one and formulated by the Gen harmony. It is possible, therefore, to speak of Genesis as an informing of consciousness. This becoming relates to creation and to the esoteric function of creation, and is going to command the phenomenon function beginning with the first number 2, the first space defined in volume, the first tone, thereafter the first octave. With the first tone or volume, the creative exoteric world, that is the outside world, begins. A volume enters into a relationship with a volume, which is but a schism between time and space. You have to understand here, the esoteric is the hidden part, you see. That's what even the seed in the ground is hidden. It's in the soil. It's in the dark matter, so to speak, you see. In order to see the physical or the exoteric. you see. Anyway, I lost my space here. The scale then discloses the numbers and through them all possible functions, that is, all consciousness and all the internal relationships of matter. This concerns the exotericism of the world, hence the relationship of quantities among themselves for which there is time separate from space and whose new, Leon says, is made by movement. The section here is called the mystique of space. Here we are concerned with volume, which is space, a contracting potency, turn of the Hoppian mystery, the word of St. John, which we can translate by the function, the golden section, acts within the unformed substance, term spirit, and contracts the latter into a volume that is determined space. And there exists no space other than volume. Spirit is void and does not appear as space without its determination into volume. The first and universal matter, it is spherical, a chaos of forms, all of which are comprised within the sphere. There's going to be an illustration here of the artwork. This is 31A, Gen Harmony. This is again from the works that basically they discovered in Egypt. So here we go. One at the top, what I'm talking about at this point. And then you'll have the one here at the bottom, which I'll reference here after I do my reading. The contracting fraternal potency compels spirit to become matter, but this is a creative act opposed to the nature of spirit, which wants to liberate itself from this constant through the counter activity we perceive as movement. Mechanical movement is the energy of despair, the revolt of spirit against its entrapment within determination. The contracting potency is a fire that surpasses all fires. Neither movements nor anything else can vanquish it unless it be its own essence. That is, it cannot be resolved into non-matter. So this is figure 31b, the Thar of Dender, the Horus of Edfud, and Horus Resplendent. And there are different things within this particular bird. You'll see the little the head figures on this particular part here also. You see, the Egyptians are trying to show us something through their artwork that will click our minds to make us think differently and see the hidden world that most of us don't know about. Let's continue on. So I'm going to start over again, start over here. But it cannot be resolved into non-matter unless it communicates its potency to spirit, materialized space, in order to produce thereof a fire identical to itself. For the contracting, materializing action ceases when the substance of which it is acting becomes equal to it. A potency, that is, cannot act against itself. It requires a opposition, you see. Thus, the form of volume results from a combat between movement, disintegrating rebellion of matter, and the contracting potency on spirit. The appearance of this double effect is light, which we translate through the specific numbers of the volume dash forms, because it is this light that is manifested by volumes. The five regular solids, like the four elements and their dodecahedral quintessence, are basic symbols for understanding. They are the hieroglyphs of number in forms. They are not factors or that what we call tangible as forms, but they are they are reality definitions or defining the boundary numbers of the five phases of a genesis, going from the sphere through the forms and to the evanescence of form once again. The nucleus of the stream contractions is octahedral. It is 8, resuming all numerical possibilities. It is the solid cosmic heart. It results from the impulsion of, um, sorry, just a second here. Hold on a second here. The golden section. That was what I was trying to think of here. Trying to find it here. They use a symbol for that, and sometimes I forget that. See where I can get back where I was at. Yeah, from contractions of the golden section is the octahedra. It is 8, resuming all numerical possibilities. It is the solid cosmic heart. It results from the impulsion of the golden factor. But the function 5 appears only later. The octahedron has 6 verticals, 8 plane faces, and 12 edges where the planes intersect. Its volume is 1/3 of the parallel piped that contains it as the indescribed sphere, and 2/3 of the volume of the cylindrical containing it. Next section is called harmony and volume. The universe, whether considering as an atom or in its totality, exists and persisted because of its internal equilibrium that we call harmony. Our senses, the effect of this equilibrium, reveal to us the elements of the harmony, especially through the ear. Hearing being the most direct of the senses and the one that does not undergo mental analysis. And so I'm going to show you this piece here. Back over here. It's at the very top here, as I show you here. So figure 32 is a parallel pipe of volume, okay? 1, the octahedron has a value of 1/3. Meanwhile, in the cylindrical of volume 1, the sphere has a value of 2/3, which is the circle within the cylindrical shape. Meanwhile, the other one is a square with two what they call two pyramids, one on upside, one downside. I know what the name of it is, but my mind's a little mystery today. Memories of the principles including or guiding pharaonic mathematics expressed through simple numbers surfaced as late as the Middle Ages. I'll call these vestiges the seed of the temple. Certain anomalies of computation based on these principles, which belong more to theology than to a rational science, led the renowned scholar Paul Tannery, Tannery, to make discoveries that were rather unexpected for our Western way of thinking. When Tannery studied the elements of eudoxes, for example, he noticed a peculiar in terminology which he summarized as follows, quote, when these numbers are multiplied by themselves, the ratio produces a composite through addition. When the two terms of a ratio are raised to the second or third power, the ratio is called double or triple, end quote. The anomaly in the language led Tannery to realize the important role of music in ancient mathematics. When Celtic term sesquilo altered the proportion between a cube and a square. That is 3 over 2. Here, therefore, exercise a very similar thought process. But Johannes Kepler was a genius. The inspired author of Mysterium Cosmopenium, The Mysteries of the World, did not disown this youthful work 20 years later. So here's what he shows here. For example, by Paul Tannery, he says here, note that the music and the intervals are added while the ratios of vibrations are multiplied. So a fifth is 3 over 2 times what they call a fourth, 4 over 3 equals 2 equals 1 octave. Taking up the idea of Pythagoras, he wanted to show how man, imitating the creator through a natural instinct, known in the notes of his voice, how to make the same choice and to observe the same proportion that God wanted to instill in the general harmony of what we call celestial movements. In a final chapter, he even specified the nature of planetary chords, that is, Saturn and Jupiter provided the bass, Mars the tenor, Venus the contralto, alto, and Mercury the alto. Elsewhere, he deals with politics. He even wants to prove that Earth has a soul and knows the zodiac. From the midst of this chaos, out of this world of dreams, there springs from his last book, the third of the laws that bear his name. He formulates it as following, quote, the proportion between the mean distance of two planets is precisely sesquiquintal of the proportions of the periodical times. What he refers to as the sesquiquintal proportion is that in which the terms of the exponent are in the ratio of 3 to 2. Here, contrary to his custom, he gives no indication of the background of his ideas. We only know through a famous passage that he searches for a long time, doubtless a long time, lines similar to those revealed in the Mysterium, and that the breakthrough was gradual. On March 8, 1618, he already suspected the law, but led astray by a miscalculation. He had abandoned it. He came back to it on May 15th, so he took a few months off, didn't he? He took approximately over 2 months. And at that time, more exact calculations convinced him of the truth of the law. It was 8 months ago that I first saw a ray of light. It has been there 3 months since I have seen the light of day. Finally, a few days ago, I saw the sun on the most admirable contemplation. I am abandoning myself to my enthusiasm. I want to challenge mortals by the ingenious confession that I have plundered the golden vessel of the Egyptians in order to furnish a sacred tabernacle for my God out of them, far from the borders of Egypt. If you will pardon me, I will rejoice over it. If you reproach me, I can hear it. The die is cast. I am writing my book. It will be read by the present age or by posterity. Little does it matter. It can wait for its readers. It can wait for its readers. Didn't God wait 6,000 years for someone to contemplate his works? And he ends his book with a prayer, Gratios ego tibi creator domini. In this way were established the 3 laws that regulate the movements of the planets. What documents this did, Kepler made use of among those still available in the 17th century, a time that saw such a profusion of dedicated seekers. He was not concerned with eudoxes. It was the regular Platonic solids that served as the point of departure for his work. And the results are the 3 laws of planetary movements, the basics of our astronomy. Like the ancients, Kepler was convinced that God, the creator, could not have created a disorderly world. This implies that it must be possible to discern a law of order from the observations of nature, and that the law must necessarily obey number. If there is a gravitation force in celestial mechanics, it cannot act arbitrarily and therefore must submit to the same laws that order number. And since the entire architecture of numbers obeys the pentagon and the dodecahedron, which deride therefore the resultant form of the golden ratio. I keep saying the wrong thing. It's not golden ratio. Yeah, lost my space again here. Sorry for that. Um, the golden form, I should say. Anyway, let me get back to where I was talking here. Where Kepler was talking about simply is that it's the law of order. So if there's a gravitation force in celestial mechanics, it cannot act arbitrarily. Of course not, because God doesn't. God is not a God of disorder. That's a law, and therefore must submit to the same laws that order number. You see, so he wrote another book. Actually, Schwaller wrote another book on numbers, which I've already done. And so these are all keys that bring this all together, this puzzle, so to speak. Uh, and the principle number 5, we've done that. See, the fractional notation of power imposed by pharaonic calculation permits that simple intermediate expression of Kepler's third law that T 2 over 3 equals R, transcribed by 3 over T over 2 equals R, where T is the time of a planet's revolution measured in days, hours, etc., from the Earth, while R is the radius, the mean distance from the planet to the sun. In this way, the ratios can be established, determining the proportionate distance of all the planets of a solar system. It suffices to know one in order to know all the others by embodying the most opposite qualities. Kepler occupies an absolute exceptional place in the history of science. F. Arrigo has written, quote, superb and audacious while pursuing his quiet quest, that is, Kepler again becomes modest and simple as soon as he has made his discovery, and in the joy of his triumph, it is God alone whom he praises. Kepler's law are the solid and unanswered basis of modern astronomy, the unaudible and eternal regulations of the movement of the stars in space. Perhaps no other discovery no justifies the word of the sages. Quote, whoever enhances the science enhances the work, end quote. Few have written so profusely and produced greater discoveries, but the long and arduous route that led there is little known. Not one of Kepler's numerous writings is considered to be a classic, and his works are little read today. His sole glory will be immortal. It is inscribed in the sky. The progress of science can neither diminish nor obscure it and the planets through the ever constant succession of their regular movements will relate to from century to century. Kepler's 3 laws are: 1. Planetary orbits are eclipsed with the sun at one focus. 2. Each planet moves in its orbit in such a way that the time of describing an arc of the orbit is proportionate to the area of the sector swept over by the radius vector. 3. The squares of the times of revolution of any 2 planets are proportionate to the cubes of their mean distance from the sun. When Kepler set forth his formula, he thought it out in notation with fractional indication. This notation necessarily implies the relationship with musical notation. Number one, when he says that the proportion between time and radius is sequential, that is to say, as 3 is to 2, it must be understood that the square of the time has the value of a cube. These are the vestiges of thought process that, curiously enough, while starting from a entirely different basis, arrives through fractional notations alone. As Arago has stated, Kepler's works are generally unknown today, and while his 3 laws constitute the foundation of our astronomy, few are there those who know the path taken by this talented individual in order to discover them. Contrary to our contemporary scientific spirit, Kepler was motivated solely by his faith and his profound belief in divine harmony. Heir to Pythagorean thought, he demonstrated through his work how the mystic of number, regarded with suspicion as skepticism, can lead to positive and indisputable results. In short, he applied the method that is the theme of this book. Quote, let intelligence of the heart speak, end quote, for it provides intuitions that can then be scientifically verified. And that is the end of chapter 9. And that is the end of what we call the section part 1 of this book called The Egyptian Miracle. So we have done a couple of videos today. And so I want to share this knowledge to you guys. And yes, Kepler, most people don't know who he is. Yet I remember studying him, but I can't remember much about him. But I knew he was a brain. He had abilities that most people didn't have. So, but anyway, I don't want to keep you guys going here. But anyway, I appreciate you being here today, the first day of January 2024. And we're finding out more and more interesting things that go on in these particular works that Mr. Phil Langdon has suggested for me to read. Thank you for being here. My channel is Discerning What Is True, and this will be on my YouTube channel and on the Odyssey channel, and also I'll be sharing this information on Facebook. Thank you for being here. Have a great day. Take care.